Hi folks, this is Karim Rao from IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, the Red Alert Labs, the video number 96. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have been working now for 6 videos in discussing a very important documentation provided by the Center for Internet Security Organization, which is a non-profitable organization seeking and publishing documentations concerning securing a lot of things, actually securing operating systems, securing applications, securing against cyber security attacks, which this is the topic we have been discussing now for 6 videos. Okay, so this documentation have provided a couple of steps so we can protect ourselves against the cyber security attacks. We have discussed 3 of these steps. The first step is to have an inventory of your enterprise assets, which includes not limited to your servers, your workstations, your phones. This is one. And the second thing is to have an inventory of your software and operating systems, which is also not limited to, or it includes and not limited to, for example, operating systems of Windows 10, Windows 11, Linux, Android systems, iOS systems. So this is 2 steps you should carefully implement, because it's not only to have an inventory of your software and hardware, but it is from a security perspective is very important to discover if there is any rogue hardware or rogue software. So this is very important from a security perspective, to make an inventory of all of your hardware and software. And the third recommendation is to make or to protect your data. And we have said to protect our data, we need to know what is the cycle of the data in my environment, or what is the data management cycle, or what is the data life cycle. So every data have a life cycle. So you should protect the data in each phase of the data life cycle. We have said that we have 5 phases for the data life cycle. First of all is to collect the data, then to store the data, then to use the data, then to share the data, then at the end is to archive or retain the data, then destroy it. Okay, so you should protect the data in every phase of its life cycle. We have discussed 4 phases of the data life cycle. We have discussed the collection cycle, or the collect phase, and the store phase, and the usage phase, and the sharing phase. Today we will discuss the last phase of the data life cycle, which is retaining or archiving and destroying the data. And we should archive and destroy the data in a very secure way, so no one can take advantage of our destroyed data to build, or our historical data to build sensitive information about our organization and our objectives, for example. So let's go and see how we can archive and destroy our data in a very secure manner. So we have said that data protection is the third control, or the third recommendation to protect ourselves against cybersecurity attacks. So and data protection, we should, to protect our data, to know the life cycle. So now we will continue. Let's see here. We need to continue discussing the data life cycle. The last phase is to archive our data. Okay, so this is one of the very important things. Data no longer required for active use should be archived for long-term retention, or should be kept for a certain amount of period. Upon the end of the required detention period, or otherwise confirmed to be no longer required or needed, data should be destroyed. Archiving and destroying data can be potentially reduce cost of primary storage and backup through data volume reduction. So we all know that one of the things to protect our data is to make backups. Okay, so, or in the storage phase, we need to make sure that we have a backup of our data in different locations, so we can store our data locally on our hard disks, or on a NAS storage, or on a local storage, or on the cloud. So we need to have alternative locations for storing our data. So this data takes a lot of or cost us a lot. So when we back up our data, our cost of backup is large because our data is increasing day by day. So when we archive our data, or when we destroy the data no longer needed, this will decrease the cost of backup. Okay, so this is one of the things. It will help us to reduce cost of primary storage and backup through data volume reduction or data size reduction. Okay, this is one of the things on, or the importance of archiving and or actually destroying data, because archiving still you need some storage to archive the data on. Okay, so we will divide the archive and storage of data into 4 phases. Understanding the benefits of archiving data, assess data for archival or vice versa reduction or destruction. So you need to assess the data, or let's see, we need to study the data carefully and give a decision to archive the data or to destroy the data. Okay, if it's no longer needed. Archive and destroy data in a secure manner. And if we need to archive the data, we need to archive it in a very secure manner, or when we destroy it, we need to destroy it in a very secure manner. Some machines are specially designed to destroy data in a very secure way. For example, the shredder machine. You can destroy important documents in a shredder machine, or a paper shredder machine. Okay, and at the end, we need to understand, when we are destroying personal data, we need to destroy it in a very effective manner. Okay, because this is personal data, and it will affect the life of its of the user of the personal data. Okay, so let's see some benefits of data archival. Reduce potential cost associated with maintenance and operating. Okay, enhance application performance with a smaller volume of data on primary storage. So sometimes, for example, if you have Windows 10 and the Windows 10 is on the C partition, for example, and you are storing data on the same partition, which is not a very best practice. If you are storing data on the C partitions, which contains the operating system, the more the data you put on this C partition, the more the performance of the operating system will decrease. So the less data you put on the C partition, the more the operating system will be in best performance. And this is applied also I think to applications. The more the application operating data for the application is more, the more or the less is the performance of the application. Anyway, saying here, okay, the first one, reduce potential cost associated with maintenance and operation, a reduction in the volume of primary data required for backup, thereby optimizing backup times and cost of primary storage. Okay, this is when you decrease the storage, when you decrease the data stored or backed up, this will make the backup operation or the backup job finishes more faster. Okay, and this will reduce the cost of primary storage. This is very thing. And the second thing, to enhance performance with smaller volumes of data on primary storage. A lower data volume on primary storage can minimize overheads on the operating system. You say a lower data volume on primary storage can minimize overhead on the operating system. So we all know, for example, that the operating system it will be used to back up the data. So let's have a scenario. For example, you have Windows 10 and you have, for example, Veeam application installed on it, and you use the Veeam to back up different locations. So the Veeam application is taking from the resources of the Windows operating system, okay, to back up the data. Okay, and the more the data increases, the more the Veeam will take from the resources of the Windows operating system. So if the data is less, then the Veeam application will take less resources from the operating system, and the backup job will be faster, and this is in the benefit of all. So this is one thing. Okay, increase security of data files. A reduction in circulated data files can reduce the chance of data being compromised by malware, infections, and cyber attacks. So the less data you have, the more likelihood it will be or the effect of cyber attack will be less. So let's, for example, have a scenario. If you have, for example, 100 terabyte of data, okay, and then you have archived 50 tera of this data, and the rest, the 50 or the rest of the 50 terabyte data is hacked. So this will be in a much better situation if all of the 100 terabyte is hacked. He's saying that a reduction in circulated data can reduce the chance of data files being compromised by malware, infections, and cyber attacks. This is a very logical thing to get to. Okay, prevent data loss, a reduction in the ability to modify data stored in the archive data management system can prevent data loss. So he's saying here that when you archive the data, here he is suggesting that when you archive data, the archive data no longer can be modified. For example, if you are putting data on DVDs, which is read only, okay, this is not a way I think most of us use backup tapes or tape drives. But anyway, he's saying if you are putting data or you are archive data on storage or media storage that is not rewritable, or you cannot write on it, or you can write on it once, so you cannot change the data. So this is a good way to prevent loss of data. No one can change the data even though it cannot be infected. Okay, so for example, we all know that malware cannot infect data on a read-only DVD. This cannot be done on the DVD, but if you copy the data from DVD to your local hard disk, then it could be infected. But the virus or the malware cannot infect data on stored on a read-only DVD. So this is one of the things to prevent data loss. So let's revise the benefits. First of all, reduce the cost of backup, enhance application performance, increase security of data, prevent data loss. Let's go further. So this is the first thing. Understand the benefits of archiving data. This is our 4 benefits on archiving data. Let's go further. Then the next thing is we need to assess data for archive or vice versa destruction. So we need to assess the data, or let's say another word for assessing, to evaluate the data if it is needed for archival or need for destruction. So for example, some governments ask your financial data to be archived for 10 years so they can inspect the data and evaluate or make approximate or predict your tax, for example. So you need to have 10 years at least of archived data so the government can evaluate your taxes. So you need to assess the data, how much, and even this, the archival duration depends upon some regulatory rules, for example, from the government or other agencies. Okay, so you need to take a decision how you can, or if you should archive the data or you should destroy the data. Let's see here. Your agency should take note of the following when deciding whether to archive or destroy data. Data profile. Unlike archived data, your agency will not be able to retrieve destroyed data. So if you decide to destroy the data, you will not be able to get it back. So you need to be very careful when you destroy the data. Okay, as such, your agency should take extra caution and permanently destroying data, when permanently destroying data. So you need to take into consideration when you are destroying data that this data will not be retrieved. This is one thing. So he's saying here, consideration in archiving and destroying data. Redundant. Okay, consideration. Data has met its purpose of collection, use, and disclosure. Redundant, I think you have multiple. He's saying redundant. I don't understand what is redundant here. Anyway, so he say this is the meaning of redundant. Data had met its purpose of collection, use, and disclosure. So the data is no longer needed. Okay, this will let you take a decision of destroying it. Data is duplicated within the same system or across multiple systems. In such scenario, your agency should only keep one source of reference. So for example, if you have a lot of copies, okay, of one single source of data, okay, then or you have here saying that this data is in multiple systems. Okay, so this data in multiple systems, so then you should remove the duplicate data, because you have a lot of locations that contains this data. I think here is saying that if you have a lot of, for example, if you have your data stored in 6-7 locations, okay, and all of these data are not needed, then you should destroy most of them and leave one as a backup. Okay, so for example, if you have a data stored in 6 locations and this data is no longer needed, so you can destroy 5 of these data and leave only the data in one location. If you have another decision to return it back, for example. Okay, so this is by redundant. And then something called trivial. So you need to take into consideration the redundant of the data, then trivial data does not serve as evidence of business activity or historical value. This is very logic. Data does not provide corporate relevant knowledge. So this data is not needed by business, or it doesn't contain any data that will if it is known, the corporate will be in loss, or it will affect the corporate. So all of these things will let you, if for example the data is not an evidence of business, it's not relevant, or doesn't provide relevant knowledge, does not give the business give rise to business insights or business objectives, or increase the business, for example, or make future business, we cannot use it, or it cannot be used to generate future business, then this will make you take a decision to destroy the data. This is very logic. So if you are destroying the data, you need first to take or to consider the data profile. And the data profile here means if the data is redundant, is the data is trivial, is the data is, let's go further, data is obsolete. So this will make a data profile. If the data is redundant and it is trivial and is obsolete, then you should destroy the data. If the data is not redundant and it's not trivial and it's not obsolete, then you should archive the data. Data had been obsolete. Data has been superseded by other information. It is old, so it is old info. There is newer information that could replace this old information. Data is inaccurate or invalid. So obsolete data should be, or inaccurate data should be destroyed. Okay, so again, the first thing we need to take a decision to archive or destroy data is to understand benefits of archiving data, then to evaluate the data to see if it is need to be archived or destroyed, and this depends upon three things. One of them, the data profile, or the data profile, or what is the nature of the data. If it is redundant, if it is trivial, if it is obsolete, then you should destroy it. If it's not redundant, and it's not trivial, it's not obsolete, then you should archive it. This is one of the criteria to or one of the things to decide whether to destroy the data or to archive the data. Okay, the second thing is, when you take a decision to archive or destroy the data, your agency internal data policy on data archival and destruction. Sometimes as I said before, the government asks you to have historical data or to archive data for 10 years, financial data, maybe another things. And sometimes even the if you are, for example, in the industrial section or in other sections, the Ministry, for example, of Industry ask you to give historical data, or to leave historical data to make, for example, reports about a certain industry, like manufacturing of cars. Anyway, so this is called regulatory obligations. So sometimes the government asks you to archive or force you to archive your data for a certain amount of time. So this depends upon your agency internal data policy and data archival and destruction. If you have a policy, you should evaluate or make a policy. For example, your owners or your company owner, for example, he wants the data for a certain amount of time. The government needs the data to be archived for a certain amount of time. Your owner, for example, asked to archive the data for a certain amount of time. This should be written in an internal data policy. Okay, so this is something you should take into consideration. Okay, let's see here. He's saying this is one. I think when you are making an internal data policy, I think this is one we have discussed before, when you make the data management cycle. So you should have a documentation about the data management cycle or the data life cycle, and you should through it also discuss your data policy, archival and destruction. Okay, you should make a sub policy called internal data destruction and archival. I will show you some examples about this from the AUC or the American University in Cairo. This has something concerning the retention period of their documentations, and University of Dammam in Saudi Arabia, you have the same. I will show you some examples about this one. So when you need to assess or to evaluate if you can destroy the data or archive the data, you should first evaluate the data profile, then you see your agency internal policy on data archival and destruction, And the third thing is to see your documentation concerning your retention requirements. We have said before that some governments ask for data to be archived for a certain amount of period. You need to see, maybe the government needs your financial data, maybe the Ministry of Industry, if you are industrial sector, needs some data, maybe other your partners need also your data to be archived. So this depends upon your government needs or regulatory needs, okay, and your company needs for retention of the data. So for example, in my field of work, we have a retention policy of 1 year, for example, maybe for some types of data to be 1 year. Okay, this is something to take into consideration. You should study how much data you need to be retained for what amount of time. Okay, so this is one thing. Company acts, and this is in the let's see here, this is something in the social service sector. So he's saying this is some advices in the social industrial sector, social agency sector. Okay, anyway, so he's saying here there is some good practices when you archive the data. Backup data archives on additional servers by creating multiple copies, if possible, to have possible backups or multiple backups of your data, maybe on the cloud and local. Check the integrity of the data by making restore tests. Okay, ensure archive data to be adheres to your retention policy. So you back up the data or you archive the data on the cloud on local storage, and then you should take into consideration the retention period or the time that you will keep this data. Okay, and when it is not needed, you should destroy it. Have knowledge about your data to efficiently determine the data needs to be accessible and though to be archived. This is what you're talking about, to have a good knowledge about your data. So if you know your data very well, you will decide when it is archived and when it is still needed, because when you archive the data, it will be difficult to access the data. It will not be changed. Archiving data means you cannot change the data. It's only in read-only mode. This is, I think, what he's talking about. So you should take into consideration which data is active, you need to work with it in your environment, and which need to be archived, because archived, you will not be able to change historical data. One of the things, when you are closing a financial year, so after closing the financial year, you can only return to the figures of the previous financial year to read it, not to change it. If you need something like this, there should be a special permission for doing this. So he's saying archiving the data, you should not, after archiving the data, to change the data. Okay, enforce high standards by choosing a suitable cloud service provider. We're saying when you are archiving it on the cloud, when archiving data on cloud servers. Okay, destruction, use a specific software that can overwrite selected files or the entire storage. Use a specific hardware appliance. Dig a user machine. The user, I think he's talking about the shredder, one of the things. And for example, if you are destroying hard disks, so for example you have a hard disk on a machine and need to destroy the data on it, format is not the suitable way for doing this. You should have something called shredding the data, okay, or some special software that should be used when you are destroying hardware, okay, or destroying hardware hard disks. Okay, it will ensure, using this special software, no one can use another software to restructure the data that you have formatted or that you have deleted. It's very, very, very common, something called erase or something called wiping the data. Wipe the data. It's not only to format the data, but to ensure that it cannot be restructured again through using special softwares or special recovery softwares. Okay, so this is one of the things we have used in my environment when I'm trying to take old or obsolete, or I have obsolete hardware. I need to destroy it or to get it out of my store. Then I need to destroy the hard disks, okay, and wipe all of the data out of it and ensure no one can restructure the data that I have wiped out of the hardware. Okay, so this is the third thing, to archive and destroy data in a secure manner. So the first thing is to understand benefits of archiving data. We have said this. Assess the data if it's for it's need to be archived or need to be destructed. destroy the data in a secure manner. This is the third thing, and this is some good practices to archive and destroy the data. And the last thing I think is to understand personal data protection Act obligations in data archival and destruction. Protection, these are the same and they are repeated every time. Protection obligation: review personal data regularly and dispose of anything that is no longer needed. Ensure personal data is permanently destroyed. Protection. Retention limitation obligation: cease the retention of documents containing personal data as soon as it is reasonable to do this. Okay, so he is saying that you should take careful consideration when you are destroying data, especially personal data. Retention limitation obligation: agencies who choose to retain personal data should anonymize the data for future use. Anonymize to make it not known. Remove any things that will point to the user or any data that will point personally to a user. Do not keep data longer than required, on it will increase the risk of unauthorized disclosure. Okay, this is something known. Consider setting clear data retention periods. The same. So he's saying that you should protect the data if you are archiving personal data, and you should destroy the personal data when it is when you destroy data in a secure manner, where you take a decision to destroy personal data. Okay, so this is the end of the data life cycle and a conclusion at the end. The data management guide serves to provide agencies with recommended practices, resources and guidelines on data management from end-to-end data lifecycle perspective. This guide is not meant to be prescriptive, but to support agencies to review, reflect, identify gaps in their current data management practices, and take steps to adopt good practices earlier. So these are the life cycles: collect, store, use, share, archive and destroy, data protection. Okay, this is the thing that CIS was talking about, data protection, and you can increase on it cybersecurity measures and protecting of personal data. Okay, so in the upcoming video I will try to show you a practical example, and we will try to put on it or to implement these 5 phases on it. We will take a practical example and see how we can implement this diagram on it. Okay, so let me show you some of the retention policies and destruction policies in certain agencies, for example like AUC. Let me show you here one of the things for the AUC. So for example, okay, this is for a university, okay, called data protection policy. So here, let's show you all here something here. Let me go further, and let's go further here, say policy. Let's go further. I think no, he's saying here, for example, let me show you the retention. Okay, the retention periods. Okay, no, I think here this is not or I cannot see it from here. Let me show you the one for the AUC. So let me see here, retention data classification and policy. I think this is for the AUC. Let me, okay, data protection on introduction, categories, data protection. No, I think this is not also it. Let me show you, no, not of this, not this is not the one. Let me show you for the one for example, this is for let me show you data classification policy. I think this is the one for the AUC. Okay, so this is the one for the AUC. Let me show you all. This is data classification. Let me show you all if he's saying something about the retention period, historical data. Let me show you all. This is classification, access rights, financial, according to classification. Here is saying a proper retention and disposal mechanism must be developed. This mechanism must be approved by information security, and so on, so on. I think no, this is not it is not the retention. Let me show you. I think this is one in a DMAM. Let me show you let me show you one thing here. I think I have one policy here for the DMAM. Let me show you. It's IC. Let me show you all. This is IC. Yes, this is the one. Okay, let me show you the retention. Okay, here is the policies. Okay, data classification. I think this is data classification policy. I think it's removed the retention. Let me show you all this one. Okay, benefits, data classification and handling. Okay, storage. Okay, responsibilities, information security policy. Okay, no, I think there is one for the data retention. Let me show you. I think, let me try to search here. Okay, let me show retention. Okay, he's saying here, let me go to the next one. Okay, backup and retention. So this is one. Let me go further. This is in the backup section, so let's see the standard. Here is saying, for example, let's go there, that the retention, I think this is in the backup. Let me get further here. So backup verification, let me go further, periods of time. Okay, storage location and retention. He is saying that, for example, here, that you should ensure that no more than 1 week of information would be lost in the event of a disaster in which campus and backup images are destroyed. Okay, and the period of 6 months has elapsed. The tapes may optionally be returned to DCT or reused or destroyed. So it's saying here that you should have a backup of at least 1 week and 6 months if you have a weekly backup and weekly backup and a monthly backup. Let's see here the retention periods. Media management, here storage. Let me see here, retirement and disposal. The media no longer contains active backup data or any has been copied to other media. The current the backup will ensure the physical destroy. Disaster recovery, no, I think we need the retention here. Okay, anyway, so there is some retention policies. We have said even in this documentation of Singapore Ministry of Social Activities, they have said that you need to have certain retention periods. For example, the government asks you to retain your data for at least 10 years to evaluate or to specify the taxes on your organization. So hope this video in front of you all. The upcoming video I will discuss a practical example how we can implement all of these data cycle phases on a practical example. We will take our scenario in the Red Alert Lab and we will try to implement this life cycle diagram and see how we can protect our data during collection, store, use and share and archival and disposal. Hope this video informative to you all. Hope this video was informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.